Good morning, everyone, once again, and a very warm welcome to our Navigating Artificial Intelligence Information session. We're delighted to have you with us as we unpack how AI is shaping the way we work and how our online learning solutions are designed to support both individual as well as organizational capability in the space. My name is Refilwe Peo, and I am the Channel Director for Digital or Online Learning at Stellenbosch Business School, Executive Development. And I am joined by our Proposal and Design Specialist, Thurisha Pillay, who's our only Durbanite on the call, it seems, as well as our guest speakers, Emmanuel Gamor, an AI ecosystem builder and enablement leader, and Dr. Cindy Friedman, an AI ethicist specialist, who we'll hear from a bit later. So we understand how valuable your time is. So without further delay, let's look into what the agenda looks like today in order for us to dive ahead. I'm going to just do a quick walkthrough. I'll start off or kickstart by just doing a brief introduction of SBS Ed and how we fit into the greater Stellenbosch University ecosystem. We'll then hear from Emmanuel, who will explore functioning in an AI world. And then we will cross over to Dr. Cindy Friedman van der Westhuizen, who's our AI, who will touch on AI ethics, I beg your pardon, the what, the why, as well as the how. And then we'll bring it back to Thurisha, who will touch on the short course, the online short course, and she'll give you a brief overview on how we've put that together and when those upcoming classes are coming. And then I will then wrap it up with solutions for organizations, and then we will have a Q&A at the end of the session. However, during the session, ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to engage throughout by dropping your questions in the chat. Our team is on standby and will be supporting with regards to that. You can either leave it there. If we don't address it in the chat, we will address it in the Q&A at the end of the session. All right, so who is Stellenbosch Business School Executive Development, right? So in short, we call ourselves SBS Ed, and we are the executive education arm of Stellenbosch Business School and forms part of Stellenbosch University, one of Africa's leading academic institutions. So while the business school delivers postgraduate degrees and diplomas, SBS Ed focuses on leadership and management development, short courses for working professionals, and customized executive programs for organizations. So what distinguishes us is our legacy, our academic quality assurance, and our strong focus on practical and high impact learning. Right, so our programs are designed not to just transfer knowledge, but to drive measurable business outcomes, right? So whether you're developing individual leaders or developing organizational capability, we aim to deliver learning that is relevant, rigorous, and immediately applicable. All right, so at SBS Ed, we recognize that learning must fit into the demanding professional schedules, right? So that's why we offer multiple learning modalities, as you can see on screen. We do have blended learning, which is a structured combination of in-person as well as online components. We've got remote learning, which is what we refer to as live synchronous sessions delivered virtually, can either be on Microsoft Teams or on Zoom. We've got our face-to-face learning, which is our traditional classroom engagement with immersive interaction. And we've got our online learning, which is predominantly asynchronous learning, completed with a guided time frame, also supported by synchronous or scheduled touch points. And then we've got hybrid learning, which is a tailored mix of modalities, often used in our customized organizational solutions, which I will touch on a bit later. So this flexibility allows us to meet diverse business needs across industries, geographies, as well as workforce structures. And today our focus will specifically be on our online Navigating AI program. All right, so online learning at SBS Ed, just a quick summary. It is designed to remove the barriers of time and place or location, right? So it's particularly well suited for your busy executives, shift workers, and operational teams, frontline staff, traveling professionals, remote teams, as well as our digital natives. We usually recommend that participants commit between 5 to 7 hours per week, but that's also up to you. And importantly, we do not take the approach of isolated learning in these programs. Our online programs include scheduled live webinars with faculty, interactive discussion forums, connecting with like-minded individuals across geographies, as well as a dedicated learning process facilitators in selected programs, right? So this ensures that flexibility does not come at the expense of engagement, academic integrity, or that interaction that we all crave. So we ensure to combine convenience with structure, and independence with support. Right, and behind this experience is a dedicated digital channel team. Most of you have probably already engaged with some of us, from design to business development, through to program management and delivery. This is the team that ensures that your online learning journey is not only seamless, but also aligned to your objectives. And collectively, we are focused on one thing, and that is building digital learning experiences that translate into real organizational capability. All right, and to deepen today's conversation, we are joined by two experts who bring both global perspective as well as practical insights. We've got Emmanuel Gamor, who brings extensive experience across organizations such as MTN, Google, Meta, as well as YouTube, where he has worked with digital and AI ecosystems. His focus today will be on functioning effectively in an AI-enabled world and translating AI into real business value. And Dr. Cindy Friedman van der Westhuizen is an AI ethics academic or specialist holding a PhD in applied ethics. And she will be bringing a critical perspective, a very important perspective on ethics, governance, as well as responsible AI. So she'll be helping us understand not just what is possible, but what is responsible, right? So because there's only one thing, because there is one thing we know about AI, I beg your pardon, and it is that organizations and people that will lead in this space are not those who adopt AI the fastest, but those who adopt it the most thoughtfully. All right. And with that context, I will now move over to Emmanuel's section. Emmanuel, I will hand over to you and you will take us through functioning effectively in an AI-enabled world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as was shared earlier, it's such a joy to have you on here. I think AI is incredibly topical. And we do have an AI course, so this session is a bit of a teaser. We obviously can't dive in so much, but we'll take through you guys through a couple of baseline understanding and then potentially a few slides on um sorry, there's still a bit of feedback. If admin can mute the call that is still online, that would be grateful and helpful. And if you can hear me, please just thank you. And if you can hear me, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. But as I'm presenting, go ahead and drop some of them in the chat. We have our colleagues who will be helping move the conversation forward. So to start off, before we get into AI, I think we'll start off with the foundations around digital journey, and just a few things around the definition of digital and where we're at, because almost like the foundational rails for you to be able to build artificial intelligence is understanding digital. And digitization, as most of you probably have heard over the last 2 decades or so, is converting analog data into machine readable format. And digitalization is making that format, putting it to use. You'd hear a little about that when AI talks about machine learning, data synthesis, and other things. And then digital transformation, of which most of our countries, South Africa, Rwanda, Nigeria, have adopted, is when you do have an economic and societal benefit from moving from a manual to a digital process. And this is quite important as we go on into where we're at with artificial intelligence. Next slide, please. So we've heard about AI. Most people are probably in touch with AI through social media or some apps, or you've seen lots of ads talking about AI in different forms. Some of it can be the new topical, what is the next AI invention? Some of it can also be, how does AI impact your jobs and where you sit? But wanted to just ground this presentation a little bit on the history of AI and how we got to be here. So you had the mathematician, logist, Alan Turing, British. um, almost considered the godfather of AI, but also more around machine learning. And his big quest was to find out, can machines think? And in doing that, he was able to test the evidence of machines mimicking some level of human computational power in 1950. So this has happened quite a while ago. Think about early independence for most of the countries on the continent. The first test showing some level of human intelligence predates that. And out of Dartmouth in the United States, Dartmouth is a college, and AI or artificial intelligence was coined around there as well. And for most of us who've been excited about chatbots or being able to speak, whether it's using Microsoft chatbots, your favorite apps chatbots, now using OpenClaw, ChatGPT, and others, actually, Eliza was the first chatbot using natural language processing in 1966. So the technology for or that almost started chatbots, an opportunity for you to engage with the bot interface, has also been around for a couple of decades as well. For those of us who are interested in chess and games, and for those who are in the computer science space, IBM, the American company, incredibly successful tech company, Deep Blue, which was supercomputer, play chess with Garry Kasparov, considered one of the chess masters in the world in 1997. So to see machines be able to have strategy and be able to predict or compete with a human chess master was an interesting feat that happened in 1997. And those who also followed then Watson. So there's a almost a popular global now, not just in the UK or in the States, TV show called Jeopardy. And it's really around general knowledge and other things. And in 2011, IBM's another upgraded supercomputer called Watson, very fascinating names, won the quiz just to show improved computational power over the years. And I think this is where most of us who were not in, or most of you who were not in computer science and others started to hear of artificial intelligence. And that has to do when OpenAI as an organization introduced Chat GPT-2. The understanding of GPT-2 was it's created a chatbot that allowed engagement and interface. And then in 2022 is when everybody, including the tech world, digital world, realized that ChatGPT could do a couple of things. Some of it was to respond to text, and some of it now other platforms like Gemini and others was to generate images that now have become part of what we're doing. And fun fact, some of the presentations you're seeing here and images that are put together were also generated using AI models. Moving fast forward to last year and this year, two very interesting things have come out. Not just engaging with computers to give information, but also how do we build with AI? One of the more significant ones is vibe coding, the opportunity for you not to necessarily know back end, front end code, but for you to vibe, be able to describe what you want. And with computational power, you can create websites, you can create digital products and software using one of the leading European companies called Lovable. So for those of you in the comments, if you've tried out Lovable, please drop a comment. I'll be happy to see what you've created or potentially what you've worked on. Towards the end of last year as well, um, agential AI or AI agents also became incredibly popular. So big tech firms like Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, and others started to speak about the potential and power of agents. So it's not just an interface where you're doing chatbots, but it's almost like automated agents that can bundle up multiple tasks and be able to do that at a higher level. AI agents were described in regular parlance that you have with you as you're working in some kind of way for specific tasks. This year, it's been incredibly fascinating because we've started to see that OpenClaw is one of the leading apps or companies that have put together a whole distribution center for a cluster of agents. There's no longer a few agents, but agents speaking to other agents using computational power to deliver. And well, as I go forward in the presentation, I'll share that. And that's been incredibly powerful because we're starting to see that with OpenClaw, the way that we engage with apps and interface, you may be able to have agents that completely bypass what we, for very almost like dumbed down example, as humans, we would need keyboards and others, a screen to engage and have an output. But in an agent distribution center, we've created opportunities for agents to speak amongst themselves to deliver a task. and to be able to create opportunity and deliver on products and services using AI. Very interesting stuff happening almost at the speed of light. And I'll continue to share more as we go on. Next slide, please. So again, just to get baseline understanding, especially where we tackle this, because there's quite a bit on AI, we borrow from McKinsey and Company's definition from last year. What exactly is the definition of artificial intelligence? And really, it is the ability of software to perform tasks that would traditionally require human intelligence. Mirroring, I included some cognitive functions. We're still very far away from having computers being able to independently have all cognitive functions, some of them including feeling and others. But usually the cognitive functions that we're talking about are associated with the human mind. And we spoke a bit about that as well. So keep this definition in mind as we talk about AI, and especially when you take on the course and engage with us on the fundamentals of AI. Next slide, please. So where does AI sit? And I think for some of you, maybe this is not the first time you've engaged with Stellenbosch Business School or in digital and in AI. And for those of you, us who have been following with Fourth Industrial Revolution, you probably are looking at, okay, how does this fit into what's going on? Over the last couple of years, we've spoken about Internet of Things, IoT. Telcos have been able to push almost access to internet with 5G networks. We've also been able to see cloud computing and big data being stored away from your local desktop or computer service, but somewhere in the cloud. And we've also been able to see blockchain technology. And for those of you who've heard about distributed ledger and cryptocurrency, and you can see that AI and artificial intelligence sits within the system, right? And in order to amplify and engage that, we don't want you to forget about all of these other things that come together in order to allow computational power. Next slide, please. This slide helps with bringing or almost identifying a lot of what other folks have shared over time. We started to see an incredible amount of development in AI. Their initial stages of ChatGPT and others were text-based, and then we saw Google with Gemini almost allow folks to generate or create opportunity where you can describe something. And for those who are graphic designers, may be able to appreciate this. You can generate text content, images. Now with apps like Suno, you can also generate some level of composition. The challenge, though, that or the pushback is that creativity and original creativity, which is a cognitive function, cannot be created by AI yet. A lot of critique from the creative industries speaks to AI as combining already existing and historic things. And so I have seen in the comment Leon talking about full human cognitive function. Some people believe that imagination is a cognitive function, which we're yet to see. There are hallucinations in others, but I'm happy to dive into that a little bit more. But this helps you identify, and I'm sure if you've seen articles, you can see big companies that are associated with AI and specifically Gen AI. There are other AI platforms that are more around manufacturing and performance-based and service ops. They may not be as popular, but quite a bit of them are being used in industrial production. And some of it, I think, of the most notable one globally, Anthropic and Claude, for example, are being used for military purposes, of which I could touch on just a little bit if that's of interest to the group as well. Um, but here you can see almost the real world use cases and then the categorization of how people are using AI mostly, and then example of tools that you may have come across. Obviously, this is nowhere near comprehensive. There are almost 101 or 101,000 apps that pop up every other day on our feed as more people are exploring the different use of AIs and are building on top of AI engine systems in order to serve a specific need. Next slide, please. So wanted to pull a few things just to also help you all understand how are we functioning in this new world of AI. They're incredibly wonderful opportunities that come with that, but as my colleague Cindy, Dr. Cindy will talk about, there are also fascinating challenges around that. On the business side, you can see that there's quite a number of really big ticket IPO and funding that has gone into raising capital in order to build that. OpenAI leads in record-breaking 122 billion funding round, as is going for an initial public offering, and this announcement was made as of last month. So we're keenly looking, do we resource AI? What is the cost of it, and how much is needed for some of these engines in order to almost deliver at the speed that they are with the computational power? For those of us who are thinking of AI in the business sense as well and excited about chatbots, and I mentioned distribution center for chatbots, OpenClaw is one of the most popular ones, and it allows almost like clusters of agents to work and workflow to happen. Claude seems to be one of the more chosen enterprise tools for AI. And unfortunately, we're starting to see that as more chatbots use AI, the subscription goes very high. So one of the things that we hope that would also be able to give you confidence about is as you're engaging with different AI tools, you'll be thinking and forecasting what is the cost of subscription? How do you manage that moving forward? And how do you make good business decisions when you enable AI within your work process and workflow? Um, Also, one of the things that has come up is um, things like chips making, use of resources. Not to forget, outside of the US, China is also big in terms of delivering on chips and special focus on manufacturing and using AI for scaled manufacturing. You can think of EVs, you can think of fashion, and all the other things that China is really big on in industrialization. And also think of all the Android and Chinese tech companies that need the technology in order to boost production and compete with American made and European made goods as well. For those who are also in the legal field, so some of the more popular or interesting use of AI, some of them have not been as successful, but to explore AI both in consulting and in the legal space. There's a landmark lawsuit against OpenAI, another leading AI, in order to allow GPT to provide legal advice. Um, there's a lot that's going to be there based on the seminal hearing of the case. How far can AI be used in defending clients? What does that look like? And that also speaks to my earlier point about depending on AI's full cognitive ability and ethical reasoning. Would it then be dependent on precedent? Would it be able to argue new cases? Would it be able to fully be able to stand up to jurisprudence and help or defend a client or prosecute a client? So interesting times with the type of information and computational power being AI. I didn't touch on healthcare, but countries like Rwanda have also adopted AI use in order to monitor and create a national dashboard. Um, and it's really interesting and exciting to see how that's going to play out as well. Next slide. And one of the things that I wanted to also juxtapose is we hear about AI broadly and especially in the West and about the use. One of the topical issues that almost captured everybody's imagination in January was um, President Donald Trump accusing and blacklisting Anthropic from the use of Claude from the Pentagon, which is national security's supply chain. Reports of Claude being used in multiple, almost like war scenarios. One showing military's dependency, but also two giving those of us in industry an indicator of how powerful AI tools can be in terms of warfare. This graph is one of the latest data. So caveats on the data is as of Jan this year, and it was a window in November to see where is Claude, which is now, by most professionals' opinion, leading in the use of AI. And you can see for our context and for most of the people who um, responded to Ref's call from where you're talking about that the African continent, there's actually very little data. And so those are unfortunately the black spots, but also very minimal use. So we're seeing per population size, very low numbers of AI use. What that means is that even the number of people who are engaging with the tools at a good level, engaging with the tools in order to um, potentially see productivity is very, very or incredibly low from our part of the world. And that's something that we're also thinking about. And this is justified. AI and engagement in AI or the building of AI costs quite a bit of money. OpenAI, which is raised the most, is valued and value creation at 852 billion as of this year. Anthropic is also estimated at 380 billion. Um, and the reason why OpenAI is valued at that is because of the distribution adoption initially by Microsoft. And so OpenAI has been an integral part of the rollout and how it works. But we're seeing that Anthropic and Claude is also becoming one of the AI that allows you to easily transfer maybe your data and machine learning processes and logic into the other platform. And as I said, by a lot of national security services, Claude seems to be one of the enterprise platforms for choice. So there's quite a lot of value that's been created by companies that are building AI solutions. But there's also quite a lot of utility and energy use across. But there's a lot of opportunity and gap in our African continent. And so hopefully, as you're speaking to us and you're engaging with us at Stellenbosch, we can try and give you a foot in the door to understanding what opportunities are available, what challenges are available, and in which ways can you navigate a world of functioning within AI as well. I believe this may be the last slide. Yes, I did want to keep it a bit brief. Happy to take questions, but I'll hand over to my colleague, that's Cindy Friedman, and she would take us through ethics, which is incredibly important, what, why, and how you would navigate AI in this incredibly exciting and fast-changing world. Dr. Cindy.
Thanks so much, Emmanuel. So good morning, everyone. It's really great to be with you today. And as Emmanuel said, I'm going to take you through the AI ethics side of things. So Emmanuel gave a really great overview of what is really happening in the world of AI, different kind of tools that we can use in different contexts. He even kind of gave a little bit of a sprinkle of the AI ethics side of things, which is great. So I'll draw a little bit more on some of the case studies that he mentioned. But yeah, I could talk about AI ethics forever. I think the fact that I have a PhD in this topic means that I could talk about it for quite a while. But I'm going to try bring everything together into 15 minutes just to try and give you a little bit of a taste of what AI ethics is, why ethical issues arise in the context of AI in the first place, and then very importantly, what happens with the regulation of AI ethics. Right, so what is AI ethics in the first place? And very briefly, it's basically a field that ensures that AI aligns with our human values. So we saw in Emmanuel's presentation, there's a lot of benefits to using AI. It can make us really productive. It can really help us in very many different contexts. We know how beneficial the technology is. But the problem is that it comes with risks and concerns as well. And basically what AI ethics does is we try and reap the benefits of AI technologies while trying to mitigate the risks as much as possible. So this technology can essentially remain good for the world and good for society. So there are some basic core principles of AI ethics. So I'll take you through these quite briefly, but what I'm going to do later on in the presentation is really zoom in on fairness in the context of bias and discrimination. But just briefly, some of these core principles that we could consider, looking at what fairness is in the context of bias and discrimination, is basically making sure that when AI is making decisions, that everyone is treated equally. But I'm not going to discuss this too much because we'll get into it a little bit later. Accountability. We have machines that are making decisions that impact people in a very real way. They sometimes decide who might get a loan, for example, or who gets the job. And when something goes wrong, I mean, this even happened in the context of self-driving cars, where a few years ago there was a self-driving Uber that hit and killed a cyclist. And there was this whole debate saying, okay, but who is held responsible? Is Uber held responsible? Is it the programmer? Is it the person that should have been kind of overseeing how this car was being driven? So there's what we call this responsibility gap. Who is accountable when these systems are self-learning? Transparency. So we need to really understand how these machines are coming to the decisions that they make, because this also helps us think about who can be held responsible when things go wrong. Privacy and security. This relates to your data protection. We know that all these systems work off of the data that is being collected from us. So this relates to data protection. It also relates to things that relate to surveillance technologies as well. So surveillance is really great in certain contexts. It keeps us safe, but there's also a certain amount of breach of privacy as well. And then safety and social impact. So this is basically also because we have different contexts where AI systems are making very real decisions that impact our lives. So are these systems safe? But also thinking about the social impact. So we know now that there's huge sustainability issues when it comes to the use and the implementation of AI, the amount of water that is being used, pollution that is being generated as well. And of course, social impact, everyone is concerned in the context of job loss as well. A lot of jobs being automated. And so there's social impact concerns in that regard as well. So these are just kind of your core principles that we can think about in the context of AI ethics. But now I want to go beyond these principles, right? So I'm a philosopher by training, and philosophers, we really like to ask questions. And so I'm going to go beyond these principles, beyond principles where if you just do a quick Google search, it'll tell you what the principles are. I want to probe a bit deeper and think beyond these principles, think about some deeper philosophical insights, because this will help us explain why these ethical concerns arise in the first place. And it's important to know why they arise, because knowing why they arise is going to help you mitigate these ethical concerns and mitigate the risks that come along with AI. And we're also going to think about when we should act. How do we regulate these ethical issues in the context of AI? Next slide, please. Okay, no, this is the next slide, sorry. Right, so why do these ethical concerns arise in the first place? And this is because technologies such as AI are not neutral tools. So what I mean by this is that there's often this perception that AI is just numbers and data, right? Surely it's objective, it's neutral, it's helping us make objective decisions. But the thing with AI is that because it's learning from data that is produced by our own societies, we know that our society has a lot of problems, there's a lot of inequality. And so what happens is it's learning from this data that reflects unequal societies. And then this AI is then reflecting the society, it's reflecting unequal societal values. And so that's one side of it. But what we also see is that AI has very real social and political impact as well. So probing a little bit deeper into this, and here we take a look at some of the literature that is in this field. So AI reflects societal values, like I said, because it's using our data, learning from society, and so design choices in the context of AI embed power structures and have political consequences. And although AI is a relatively new technology, this conversation has been happening for years in the context of different kinds of technologies. And we can take it all the way back to Langdon Winner, who wrote this paper, I think, in the 60s. And he wrote this paper called Do Artifacts Have Politics? And he has this example of low-hanging bridges in New York City. And you might think, okay, well, how does a bridge as a technology reflect societal values? How could it possibly embed power structures in society? But what was happening is because these bridges were so low, it meant that only cars could go beneath these bridges. But public transport, like buses, were too high. They couldn't go beneath these bridges. And so what was happening is that certain parts of the city were restricted to certain people and certain demographics, because we know that New York at the time, certain demographics and certain echelons of society had their own private cars, so they could go where they wanted, whereas people who were restricted to using public transport could not gain access to certain parts of New York City, right? So it was really reflecting societal values at the time, and it was embedding these power structures that existed at the time. And this was just a bridge. And now we're seeing this happen in the context of AI as well. And so Shannon Bala has this really amazing book called The AI Mirror, where she says very similarly that AI reflects these social values. It's learning off of our data. And so we have to be so careful about the data that we are using to train these systems, because AI mirrors our society, and we have to think about whether we want AI to make the world a better place, or do we just want it to keep reproducing the problems that we already have. So there's two case studies that I want to briefly mention. So the first is the COMPAS AI algorithm. So this was a risk assessment tool that is actually still being used in US courts, controversially so. And the idea here is that this algorithm is able to predict the likelihood of recidivism or re-offending. And it was used in bail, parole, and in sentencing decisions to help judges make decisions about whether people would reoffend, should they get bail, should they go to prison or not. But ProPublica found that there were major issues with the system. So in a major investigation by them in 2016, researchers found that COMPAS disproportionately flagged Black defendants as high risk, even when they did not go on to commit another crime. Conversely, white defendants were often rated as low risk despite reoffending. And you can look at all these scores, right? So we have a case where we had a white man, which is classified as low risk, compared to the Black male, which is classified as high risk. But if you look at the actual prior offenses and the crimes that were committed, it makes no sense, objectively speaking, that this white male would be at a low risk for reoffending as opposed to this Black male. And what was happening is that the system was learning off of historical data. We know that in the United States of America, there's major issues with inequality in the criminal justice system. And they didn't really think about this when they were just inputting the data. And the fact that historically speaking, it was more likely that Black individuals would be arrested and would be treated unfairly by the criminal justice system as opposed to white offenders. And essentially this algorithm is racist, right? Because they weren't thinking about the kind of data that they were using and the very real implications that this had on real people and their lives. Another example is Amazon's AI recruiting tool. So that algorithm was problematic in terms of race. Now we have a situation where this AI algorithm was problematic in terms of gender. So Amazon created what they thought was this really amazing tool that was going to help them screen for tech roles, right? So it was going to look at people's resumes, screen them, make people's jobs so much easier. But what they found was that the system was favoring men and it was penalizing women. And this is because it was reflecting past hiring bias. And this is because historically, it was the case that more men would be hired for more tech roles. And so it was learning from these patterns, finding these patterns in the data. And when women were sending in their resumes, they just weren't making it to the next round at all. And Amazon ended up having to scrap this tool despite the fact that they had invested so much money in it. So this is all to say, what I said is that AI is not a neutral tool. It learns off of our data, which reflects societal values and has very real social and political impact. So just as the Bridge example was physically restricting access, COMPAS and Amazon were digitally reinforcing inequality through their predictions. So Bridges, we had the physical infrastructure, COMPAS was this algorithmic infrastructure, but in both ways, it was limiting access to certain people and had real societal impacts. So while these systems appear neutral, they're learning off of numbers and data, they really aren't. And they produce unequal outcomes along social lines if we're not very careful about the data that we are using. And basically, these outcomes reflect existing societal structures and not just technical flaws. So when it comes to AI ethics, yes, it very is often a technical issue, but it's also a societal issue. We have to reflect on the kind of society that we're living in, the kind of data that we are collecting, what data we are using, and essentially the kind of role that we want AI to play in our society. So I've spoken a lot about ethics, but you're also interested in the business value, right? So what kind of business value does AI ethics bring? Well, if you think about it, so if you think about Compass, for example, this is a case study that is used by AI ethicists all over as an example of what not to do, right? So if you're not taking these ethical considerations very seriously, there's a reputational risk for your company as well. People aren't going to want to do business with you if you are being ethically a little bit shady with your AI systems. There's also a financial risk as well. So Amazon, for example, they had put so much money into this recruiting tool and they ended up having to scrap it. So there was money lost there. Or what happens is you might have to spend money to then backtrack and fix the system after it has been implemented. So it costs even more money, and you're also losing the money that you had invested into implementing and developing the system in the first place. There's legal risks as well, obviously. And then there's a trust issue as well, because if you're being ethically shady when you are using and implementing AI into your business context, and all these scandals come out, people aren't going to want to trust you with their information. They're not going to want to use your systems or do business with you. And Emmanuel had mentioned what was going on with Claude and ChatGPT, and this is an amazing example, right? Where so many people have started moving over to Claude because they felt that this was just their ethics just felt better, the way that they were approaching ethics in the context of what they really stood for as a company. And more people have started moving over to Claude. And there was a whole campaign for people to quit ChatGPT because of they were interested in Donald Trump's administration using their AI systems and tools for military use. So basically, these issues translate directly into business risk if you don't take ethical issues into account, but also translate into opportunity, because companies that handle AI responsibility are going to build trust with their customer base. They're also going to build differentiation from companies who don't take AI ethics seriously. And we've spoken a lot about what's going on overseas, but locally in South Africa, a few days ago, South Africa's national AI policy framework was officially open for public commentary. So things are moving quite steadily there. And it's important for companies to get ahead of the curve when it comes to AI ethics and the implementation of this policy, because once this policy is legalized, companies are going to be forced to take AI ethics into account. But why not get ahead of the trend and differentiate yourselves as a company and as a business and put ethics first and foremost from the beginning? So now, how do we even govern these systems? I don't have a lot of time yet left, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But basically, the idea here is that we need to be proactive. So don't wait for something to go wrong and then try and backtrack, because then you've already done damage to your reputation. It's an expensive mistake to make as well. We also have to take a bottom-up approach. So you need to really deeply understand the context in which this AI is going to be used. And from there, you can start to think about specific ethical risks that we might have to navigate within that space. So as we saw with Compass and Amazon, and we are seeing with ChatGPT and the Claude debacle as well, most companies act after something goes wrong. We really shouldn't be doing that. And this is because we must take a proactive approach that embeds ethical thinking early before systems are deployed. And it's really good business practice, right? So this proactive bottom-up ethical framework ensures that AI systems are not only technically affected, but also socio-responsible from the outset. And there's often this kind of idea that AI ethics can be a setback because it slows things down. Not necessarily. As we saw, it'll slow things down for you if you have to backtrack. It'll slow things down for you if you have to scrap a system that you invested so much time and money into. So AI ethics, at the end of this whole presentation, is really good business practice. And I think that is it from me. So I'm going to hand over to Dhrisha.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cindy. After hearing both Emmanuel and Cindy's insights, you can almost think of AI as a really smart intern. Extremely helpful, but you still need to review the work very carefully. So building on the importance of taking that proactive approach, as Cindy has mentioned, to AI governance and responsible business practice, I'll now introduce the Navigating AI program by Stellenbosch Business School Executive Development and how it equips you to do exactly that. So the Navigating AI program is pitched or aligned to an NQF level 6 and runs over 7 weeks. So this is not a cancel your entire social life situation. We recommend you spending, as Refiwa mentioned, between 5 to 7 hours a week to get through the content, the videos, quizzes, and contribute to the discussion forum as well. How you plan to play with those hours in a week is entirely left to you. So we have one faculty webinar whereby you can engage with your faculty to go through some of the pertinent topics and ask any academic related questions you may have. At its core, the program is designed to demystify AI. It builds a clear understanding of AI. It develops practical skills to apply it and enables confident adoption in a fast-paced environment. But more importantly, it equips you to bring AI into your organization in a smart and responsible way, balancing opportunity with ethical and practical considerations. And yes, we'll also explore the value in which AI can unlock and where it can and where it is all heading in the next few years to come. So who's this program for? It's for leaders, strategists, technology professionals, consultants, and anyone using AI who needs a solid foundation to leverage it for growth and innovation. Why this program? So you'll gain real-world insights from experienced professionals. We've interviewed great global leaders in AI, which you can benefit from as well. It also builds a strong foundation in AI and the understanding of its future potential, so staying ahead of the game. There is a business case for participants to implement, which will be relevant to the area of focus, with a clear implementation plan pertinent to your organization. You will also establish a supportive AI learning community whereby you'll connect with faculty and peers as well. And the what is underpinned by going through 5 core modules: AI principles and categorizations, the value, limitations, ethics, and the future of AI. So this is what we call our journey overview or one-pager at SBS Ed. We have the orientation session at the beginning to help participants understand the expectations of the program, and we'll go through the functionalities of our learning management system or portal called Moodle. We have those 5 core modules, as I've mentioned, and a webinar in the middle. And I'll take you through a bit more in detail pertinent to these modules in the next slide. Okay, just remember we have that assignment at the end of the program. So in this program, you will address the certain head-on challenges that we face in today's AI evolution and the cost benefits. We've just heard how digital transformation is reshaping the way organizations operate and how AI is fast becoming a key driver of that change. Emmanuel spoke about the value AI can unlock. And Cindy reminded us that with that power comes real responsibility. Because we've seen the biggest players like Amazon even getting it wrong. So the question becomes one to really ask: how do we actually navigate this space with confidence? One of the biggest challenges is that many professionals lack clear understanding of AI. It can feel complex, even intimidating. Then even when we do understand it, there's often uncertainty around where it truly adds value in our organization. And let's be honest, AI can sometimes be oversold, which is why understanding its limitations is just as important in understanding its potential. On top of that, there are ethical considerations, from data privacy to fairness and accountability, which link directly to Cindy's point around governance. Because if we're not intentional about how we use AI, we risk making decisions that could harm trust, credibility, and even people. And finally, there's the challenge of simply keeping up. AI is evolving so quickly that many organizations are even unsure of how to prepare for what's coming next. That's exactly where the program comes in. Through expert insights from AI professionals, you gain real-world perspectives, not just theory, but what's actually working in practice. You'll also work on a hands-on business case and implementation plan. So you're not just learning about AI, you're actually applying it into your context. Sometimes online learning does sometimes get a bad rep for being a bit lonesome. However, the program also creates a space for interactive discussion because navigating AI isn't something you do in isolation. It's about learning from others, sharing experiences, and building that confidence together. And of course, the live webinar in the middle will be held with faculty, which gives you a direct access to ask questions and deepen your understanding. Ultimately, the program is about future-proofing you and your organization so you can harness the value of AI, make informed and responsible choices, and put the right governance in place. It's not just about using the technology, it's about using it well. So for 2026, we have 3 intakes which you can choose from: April, June, and September intakes. Applications do close 1 week before each intake starts. Apart from the open intakes, organizations can choose to take this course in-house through ready-made or customized solutions exclusively for your organization. And I'm now going to hand over to Rafeelware to take you through those solutions for your organizations. Over to you, Raf.
Thank you very much, Tharisha. I do realize that we have gone just a bit over time. So I'm going to just speak to the learning and development managers that are in the room so that we can just emphasize on what we can do for you as an organization and how to go about doing so. So as Tharisha's mentioned, we do have both our ready-made solutions as well as our customized solutions. And what we mean by our ready-made solutions is our off-the-shelf. And these can be delivered in either the public program, the dates that you just saw, as well as a closed cohort. So if your organization wants the program as is, however, you are interested in maybe a separate date, and maybe you want to add a couple of elements that are specific to your organization, we can then organize that for you. Please note that for that solution or for those solutions, we require a minimum of 15 participants in the cohort. And then we've got our customized solutions, and this is where we fully co-create a journey with you. And this is where we extract modules from existing courses to create new pathways, which I will demonstrate shortly. I think we can move over to how we go about doing that, Chanel. So first things first, we select a core program, and in this instance, we're speaking about our Navigating AI program. And then we can add additional or we can replace existing modules, right? I'll show you how we do that. And we do this on the basis of either identified skills gaps, and we use an aligned NQF pathway to do so. Once we've then decided on which modules it is that we want to add or replace, depending on your preference, we then co-create a coherent and structured learning pathway together with you, right? So that can be any stakeholders within your organization, your learning and development team. We also have our learning designer, Tharisha Pillay, who will also be doing that with you. And should you wish, we can also collaborate with faculty in creating that pathway for you. And then we can assign a hybrid learning pathway architecture if that is something that the organization wants to incorporate. I'm going to demonstrate by virtue of an example how exactly we go about doing this, right? So on your left, or on my left, there is the Navigating Artificial Intelligence program, right? And the modules that you see there are the modules that Tharisha has just highlighted. So principles, value of, limitations, the ethics of AI, as well as the future. What you see on the right is a list of modules that come from our library or come from different courses that we have decked out, or that we do deck out for you, that you can choose from based on skills gaps, right? And a typical example would be an L&D would approach us and say, we want to use the AI pathway, Navigating AI pathway as the core, but we need to translate it into real business impact. And then we would respond by producing the AI foundations as the core with all of those modules to build a shared baseline. And then the company or the L&D then returns to us and says, listen, there's an additional gap. And with that additional gap, they then say, our team understands AI conceptually, but we struggle to translate this into strategy. We struggle to identify practical use cases, and we struggle to drive innovation within the organization as well as within their functions, right? So we then return to the drawing board and we build around the AI as the core, as I've mentioned, and we use 3 key modules from our list of our modular library, I beg your pardon. And this is just for an example, we'll base it on designing leading edge strategy. This is to align the business or to align AI to business priorities, design thinking to identify and test real AI use cases, inspiring business innovation to drive adoption and embed new ways of working. Now the program shifts, right? And it's no longer about understanding AI. It becomes about using AI to solve real business problems and unlock value. All right. So the learning journey is then intentionally sequenced so that the program feels integrated and developmental. So not simply customized, but purposefully designed to build progressive AI capability. And finally, perhaps the L&D team then comes back with a request of an additional requirement, which is applied engagement. So incorporate a 1-day faculty-led face-to-face workshop per module, and therefore our finished product then becomes a hybrid model that strengthens the practical AI application, problem solving, as well as peer interaction, right? So this would result in a customized navigating AI learning journey, and it still maintains the academic integrity while being strategically aligned to the organization's AI capability as well as the innovation priorities, right? Should there be L&Ds in the room who are interested in this, your first point of contact would be myself. My email address is on the screen. I'm sure somebody will pop it in the chat. Contact me. We schedule a scoping session. We align, obviously, on the design. You'll then give us what your gaps are, and we let you choose from our library of modules. And then from there, we build a proposal for you. And once you are 100% satisfied with that, we'll then start with all the commercials, which is a program agreement. And thereafter, we'll move over into program launch, as Tharisha has outlined.